So I'm going to talk about a time I was helping a company to figure out what product should be from the start. And it's not going to be anything from Nordnet or my previous work. It's actually going to be from the time I was on parental leave. And we were actually just discussing parental leave before the break and how awesome it is. So I went to parental leave with my wife to Colombia. So yeah, this is a picture of, actually it's Bogota, it's not Barranquilla, but and we were in Barranquilla, Colombia, where Shakira is from actually. And also I was watching football, as you can see. So when we went there, so before I was like, okay, so it's nice to be on parental leave, but you know it might become a little bit too boring maybe. So I asked my wife, like, so, okay, so do you know anybody I could work with? And luckily, she found some people. Otherwise, I wouldn't be holding this presentation. So her friend from high school had a company, and they are a consulting company, so they make websites and apps and all that stuff. And they basically wanted to start trying to build their own products. They were really good developers and designers and everything, but they had always been working with the model of you know, the client telling them what to do, and so they hadn't actually worked a lot with actually building their own products. So that's where I came in and helped them. So this is their office actually in Barranquilla, in the top floor. It's closed shades because it gets insanely hot in there. So what they were trying to do is that they saw a problem that there are a lot of SaaS companies like Salesforce or Slack or invoicing software or anything that's online, that they need to have lots of integrations with other services, other SaaS companies, and that takes a lot of time. So their goal was to try to sell something to their clients, potential clients, that they could sell integrations in days and not in weeks or months, because it usually takes a lot of time, more time than you think it will do. And what they wanted to sell was that those companies should focus on their core functionality, which is building the actual product that they are selling their customers, if they're selling sales software or financing software or anything like that. And of course, when you have a lot of integrations, it's easier to retain your customers, because if you have thousands of customers, they all have their own preferences on what other platforms that they want to connect with. So it's very important that you build these connections with the other apps. So that's what they wanted to do. And they had actually started working on their product maybe like for 3 or 4 months. So they had figured out, or at least they thought that they had figured out kind of like what they wanted to build. And it's a slightly complicated, so I'll just go like really quickly, because just so you get some context. So they wanted to have a host, which is the SaaS company, and they would want more integrations, because you know, integrations give more customers, and more customers give money. And they would want to have that they can install buttons, so that like when you press the button, it sends information to another software. And they would have an app store, like, so that you can see all the integrations, that you can download them and all that stuff. And in the end, they would give better user experience and keep their customers. And then they would have the developers that would actually build the APIs for the host and for the receiving application, if there wasn't APIs already in the service. And then they would do the whole integration part. And then they would have the end users that would install the applications and basically just get more out of the app and enjoy it. But so this is kind of what I was presented with, and it was a little bit tricky to understand, and they had thought about a lot of different things that they wanted to do. Like the developers should be able to be third-party developers. They should be able to sell their apps to customers, and it was very, very complicated, and trying to figure out if people wanted to actually buy this software, so they had, it's like a huge product set already, and they didn't know if people would actually want it. So, and when I went there, so my goal was basically to get to the point where they can sign 3 reference customers as fast as possible and make sure that the customers want to pay for this service. So that's what I was aiming at, and hoping that I would be able to get there during my time, since it was still limited. When I went there, so I basically told them, like, okay, so let's step back and let's try to do some user story mapping, because I think user story mapping is a very, very nice technique to be able to understand the user journey. Jeff Batten, he wrote a book about it, and he wrote said it's all in how you slice it. And is there somebody who has done user story mapping here? Quite many. So I guess most of you, or some of you, know this. But the story map, you have in the top, you have the user activity. So this is an example. Let's say that you're building some kind of web and calendar app, and you have things like organizing email, managing emails, and managing calendars. And in each of those activities, you have different tasks that you might want to do, like searching emails and filing emails and composing and deleting and reading and viewing. But in all of these, you can do actually more. So when you're composing, you can send basic emails, you can send HTML emails, and this way you can build a map of different types of features that you can give to your users. And the thing with story mapping is also that you can divide it in different types of releases. Like, what's our walking skeleton? What's the first things we should build so that we can see if people actually want it? And you could say basically like, okay, so if you can create and send basic email and open an email and maybe looking at appointments, maybe that's our first version or something like that. So we did this and this exercise, and we had the CEO and we have some developers and designers, and this is kind of what we came up with. We didn't do the release planning here yet, and it's actually, the reason is like when I saw this, I could see that there were kind of like different increments of the user journey that we could focus on. And so I'm not going to go into the details here, but this is basically in somewhat how it looked like in my head. So we had like onboarding, we had like setting up the APIs in the service so that you could do the connections between the two SaaS services. We had adding a JavaScript on the SaaS side so that you can present whatever button that you want there, and you would have like third-party developers, like their logins and how they would work and everything. They would have the App Store, and they also had like, okay, we need some analytics for our hosts. So when looking at this, and the goal is still to be able to say, okay, will users pay for this service? And remembering that their goal was to get integrations really, really fast. And in order to get 3 customers, so what do we need? Do we need onboarding? No, I don't think we need to really work on onboarding, because we're probably gonna just onboard them like manually and give them accounts. There's no need for focusing on that part. Well, setting up APIs, that is something, because that's basically the core of the service. So that was something that they were required to build, but the idea was not to give access to the SaaS companies or the hosts, because then you can build it yourself and you can get a better understanding how everything works, and basically dog-fooding your product before you actually release it to the public. Adding the JavaScript, yeah, well, that's pretty much the only thing that the reference customer should be able to do, is adding a JavaScript on their site so that they can insert the buttons there. And third-party developers, let's say, no, that's way too much. There's no need to even think about those kind of things at this point. I mean, if you don't know if the customers even knows that this service is something you want to pay for, and if it actually even works when you're connecting the two different services and in a good way. App Store, similar. No need to think about that. Also, because you probably don't have all your integrations through the service anyway, so why spend time on that? And analytics, same. It's nice, but I mean, it's not the core thing. I mean, so basically, what you end up with is two things out of a very, very long list, and still is a lot of work. So I think that made them like, okay, so this is what we're going to focus on actually building. But that's not it. But we also needed to figure out, so, okay, so how do the users actually want to work with this? Because I mean, that part was just part of it, and this is more about like how do the buttons and so look. So we were thinking about use cases, and we did have some companies that were already interested in, or at least wanted to be testing it. So we were thinking about different use cases and what the users would like to do, and we were talking with the potential customers, and basically then we created some hi-fi mocks, probably some lo-fi as well, but in the end it was hi-fi mocks of like, this is what we think that the user experience should be, and this is how it should look like, and going back and forth, and finally we figure out that, okay, yeah, this is very nice. And then, of course, you know, when showing this, we did some in-vision experiences, and so you can actually see that, okay, so this is how it's going to work, and it was really, really nice. And what we found out that the users, previously the company thought that, okay, so we're just gonna need like one button and that will do all the things. But what they wanted was actually that they needed automated triggers. So let's say that you have a contract software, for example, where you have contracts, and when somebody signs a contract, you want to send that to application Y. Maybe that's your CRM software, so that somebody approved it. And they also wanted to have what we call the user triggered actions. And yeah, there was times that sometimes you just need a button, but sometimes you also needed a drop-down menu button. And sometimes a third or an extra on this one was more like that. Sometimes let's say that you are doing you have a CRM application, and maybe sometimes the CRM applications need more information on where to put it, so you need to kind of like forms so that you could choose like, okay, so I want to send this to deal number 1 or deal number 2 or something like that. So we found out about that. So what happened then? So I presented all this information, and we talked about it, and they were kind of like, yeah, okay, this looks good, but so they actually had to rewrite most of the stuff because they had already been working on for quite a while, but they didn't really know exactly how the user experience should be, or how it should work at all. So they had to rewrite a lot of the code and delay them, of course, quite a lot. So learnings, yeah, making sure you understand the user needs of the product that you want to build, and one more important thing is that to finding the most critical value, and you start from there, and then you start building from there. So that was it. Thank you.